Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Our session will begin shortly, so could you please all take your seats? Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to this session on climate change, environmental crises, and the future of the Earth. My name is Kathleen Hwang. I will be your MC for this session. Thank you for your attendance at this very important gathering. We have translation available for this session, so please note the translation channels on the screen. We have a very informative program today with 4 opening speakers, followed by 2 key presentations and 2 expert commentators. Following each of these, there will be time for general discussion, so I hope you will feel free to ask questions or to contribute your ideas on these topics. Now let me begin by introducing the host of this session, Dr. Douglas D.M. Ju, who will give the welcoming remarks. Dr. Ju is chair of the HyoJeong International Foundation for Environmental Peace, the organizer of today's program. Dr. Ju previously served as chairman and president of the Washington Times and United Press International, as well as the American Life TV network. He was president of the World Media Association and co-chairman of the Board of Trustees of the University of Bridgeport in Bridgeport, Connecticut. Let us warmly welcome Dr. Douglas Ju.
Good morning, distinguished leaders and guests from around the world. Welcome to Session 1 of World Summit 2025. Here, we have a gathering of political, academic, and cultural leaders, including women leaders and religious leaders from more than 115 countries. On behalf of the HyoJeong International Foundation for Environmental Peace, or HJIFEP, it is my great honor to welcome you all to Korea to reflect on issues of global concern. As you are all well aware, climate change and the environmental crisis are presenting major challenges for humanity in the 21st century, increasing levels of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere are causing the average global temperature to rise, and various environmental disasters are occurring around the world. If this trend continues, many experts fear that the planet could experience a 6th mass extinction. Scientists working with international organizations such as the United Nations have pointed out that humanity is currently responsible for global warming. The UN has set goals to reduce the use of fossil fuels to save the planet, and most of nations of the world are already on board. However, even with these goals, the international community is slow to act, and the problems are escalating. To address these critical issues, Reverend Dr. Hak-Ja-han Moon established HJIFEP in 2017. HJIFEP, which is organizing this session of the World Summit, has the mission to identify the best possible solutions to these environmental problems. Since the time of its founding, HJIFEP has convened 10 world-class international conferences focusing on environmental issues. The proceedings of these conferences can be accessed in print form and through our website. Also, since April 2021, we have been publishing an online bi-monthly periodical, The Earth and I, which highlights the urgency of environmental challenges and offers appropriate avenues to overcome them. Furthermore, HJIFEP has been advancing its work through lecture presentations and the practical service project. For our signature event last year, we aligned with the UN World Environment Day in June, when we hosted Environmental Summit 2024 with the theme Rejuvenating Our Ecosystems. At that event, renowned experts raised the awareness about the serious challenges of land degradation and inspired participants to start conservation in their own yards. 7 nonprofit environmental groups were represented at the event. Today, we are grateful to play an integral role in World Summit 2025. We have organized this session, which has the theme Climate Change, Environmental Crisis, and the Future of the Earth. We will hear from some of the world's experts on environmental issues, as we will learn about the seriousness of environmental problems. Let us realize that now is not a time for rhetorical arguments, but a time to act. I'm so glad to see this gathering of leaders from around the world. You are already actively participating in many projects in nearly every sector of society. Guided by the knowledge and the insight we gain from this meeting, let us commit ourselves to taking a big step forward, achieving the goal of establishing environmental peace in the world. Once again, we extend our warmest welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ju, for your explanation and for your welcoming remarks, and also for the work that you and your staff have put into putting this session together this morning. Now it is my great pleasure to introduce a message from Dr. Hak-Ja-han Moon, who is the founder of the HyoJeong International Foundation for Environmental Peace, as well as co-founder of the Universal Peace Federation. Representing Dr. Moon today is her daughter, Dr. Sunjin Moon, who is Executive Director of HJIFEP. She has previously served as Senior Vice President of Women's Federation for World Peace and also as International President of Family Federation for World Peace. Let us warmly welcome Dr. Sunjin Moon to deliver the Founder's Address.
Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is my great privilege to welcome you all to this special session of the World Summit 2025. Here we have a gathering of leaders from practically every field of human endeavor: government, the arts, sciences, businesses, and every major religion. You are the passionate change makers united by one common goal: to build a world of peace, prosperity, and happiness for all life on this glorious planet. For your commitment to this goal, I truly honor you. This goal of world peace has also been a dream envisioned by the founders of the Universal Peace Federation, the Reverend Dr. Sun-Myung Moon and the Reverend Dr. Hak-Jahan Moon, which is sponsoring this World Summit. It is one of their fruits of their labors together with other organizations they have founded, including the Women's Federation for World Peace, Professors World Peace Academy, Youth and Students for Peace, and the American Clergy Leadership Conference. So they all have peace in their names. These organizations have been their lifelong passion and significant endeavors. However, for them, it was not merely a profession or a dream or a vision, but a call to action that resonated with their hearts, soul, and conscience, which communed with our Creator and the dream of peace originally envisioned for humankind and creation. In their view, all human beings, transcending race, religion, and nationality, form one family under God, a higher power, or heart of a heavenly parent for all life. From this perspective, they tirelessly invested their efforts and founded many organizations dedicated to preventing war, reconciling enemies, and promoting peace. Through acts of charity, fostering forgiveness, leading with love and global consciousness, and thereby transcending boundaries with worldwide solidarity and oneness under our Heavenly Parent. These organizations educate and connect with like-minded and heartfelt individuals to turn this dream of peace into a reality. However, when we observe the world today, we are still far from that loving vision, as it continues to suffer from countless wars, endless conflicts, and ongoing climate devastation, and all acts of human ignorance and greed that undermine the peace for all humanity and this amazing planet. To live in peace with one another, we also need to live in harmony with the environment. This is because we are interconnected with our natural surroundings, just as we are with the people all over the world. Unfortunately, human activities have often been carried out with little concern for the effects on our environment. Our apathy towards and abusive exploitation of the natural world has led to the significant growth of problems such as pollution, loss of biodiversity, ecosystem degradation, and climate change, all which threaten our very existence. To address these problems, various methods are being pursued. They include the formulation of appropriate national policies and international agreements, the development of solutions based on science and technology, and outreach through education. However, each has its limitation and needs to be guided by values that benefit all of humanity. More than my words, I'm going to quote the founder's words. In Dr. Hak-Jahan's memoir, Mother of Peace, she said, "God wants us to develop science and technology as tools which can exercise dominion of love over all things. Moreover, it's the founder's view is that science and technology are the common assets of all people, and developed countries should share these assets with developing nations. And ultimately, the fundamental solution to environmental problems is based on elevating our consciousness and establishing harmonious relationships between humans and nature." In his autobiography, As a Peace-Loving Global Citizen, Dr. Sun-Myung Moon says, "We need to have a heart that knows how to love nature and love people. Anyone who cannot love nature or love people is not capable of loving God. Only a person who can love nature can love God. With those words and that spirit and this heart, in 2017, Dr. Hak Ja-han founded HyoJeong International Foundation for Environmental Peace. Its mission is to find, promote, and help implement the most effective solutions to environmental challenges. To fulfill its mission, HJIFEP is undertaking a unique set of approaches. First, we promote nature-friendly character education, aligned with our God-given responsibility. Second, recognizing the interconnections between humans and nature, we advocate the principles of interdependence, mutual prosperity, and universal values. Third, we look for solutions through findings of both conventional science and frontier science, stretching the materialist to a post-materialist worldview. As mentioned by the Founders Chairman, this session of the World Summit 2025 has been organized by HJIFEP, and it has a theme, climate change, environmental crises, and the future of the Earth. The speakers are experts on environmental issues, and they will examine and share solutions that push the boundaries to rethink what is possible. I ask you to engage in the discussions, offer your reflections, and leave here inspired to take action. Let us join together in this process to protect and restore the health of our planet and to help build a heavenly, unified world civilization that will benefit generations to come. May God bless you and your families and your nations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Moon, for the message of inspiration and encouragement that you have shared with us today. And thank you also for representing your mother so beautifully. Next, I'd like to introduce His Excellency Keeyong, Deputy Minister for Climate Change and Special Representative for the Indo-Pacific region under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Korea. Ambassador Chung previously served as Director General of the Climate, Energy, Environmental, and Scientific Affairs Bureau and Director of Governance for the Global Green Growth Institute. He has also served as Korea's ambassador to Mauritania and Morocco. Let us welcome Ambassador Keeyong for his welcoming address on behalf of the Korean government and people.
Thank you very much for that rather long introduction. Well, good morning, everyone. Dr. Douglas Drew of the HyoJeong International Foundation for Environmental Peace, Dr. Chung, Chairman of the Universal Peace Foundation International, His Excellency Mr. Macky Sall, former President of Senegal and Chair of the Supervisory Board of the Global Center for Adaptation, distinguished guests and ladies and gentlemen. It is a great privilege to speak at Session 1 of the World Summit 2025, aptly titled Climate Change, Environmental Crises, and the Future of the Earth. I also thank the UPF and the HyoJeong International Foundation for Environmental Peace for organizing this very important gathering. We gather at a very pivotal moment, a decade since the Paris Agreement to confront a rapidly escalating climate emergency. Global temperatures have now approached 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, triggering catastrophic floods, wildfires, extreme weather. In the Indo-Pacific region, where we are, stronger typhoons and rising sea levels already endanger communities and critical infrastructure. The science is clear. The coming decade will define our climate trajectory, yet political momentum is wavering. Economic nationalism and geopolitical rivalries are fragmenting clean energy supply chains. The United States' decision to withdraw from the Paris Agreement and protracted conflicts in Ukraine and Gaza have eroded trust and diverted focus from long-term goals. Meanwhile, many developing nations still face systematic barriers to clean energy access, risking a two-speed transition that undermines climate justice. As Dr. Ju said earlier in his speech, against this backdrop, we must move beyond declarations and toward decisive action. To drive climate progress in today's complex environment, 4 priorities stand out, not just as goals, but as essential conditions for credible progress: market opportunity, global solidarity, technological innovation, and effective governance. Let me briefly expand on each. First, unlocking market opportunity. A recent OECD UNDP report confirms that well-designed climate policies can unleash investment, accelerate innovation, and drive resilient growth. Clean energy is not a cost. It is a catalyst for economic transformation. Carbon pricing, green subsidies, and clear standards must steer capital toward low-carbon solutions. International mechanisms such as international civil aviation organizations, aviation offsets, and international maritime organizations' proposed shipping levies also offer ways to align global markets with climate ambition. Second, reaffirm global solidarity. No country can solve the climate crisis alone. Closing the ambition and finance gaps requires fairness, trust, and cooperation. This means fully funding institutions like the Green Climate Fund and the Climate Technology Center and Network. It also demands deeper coordination bilaterally, regionally, and internationally through mechanisms like the G7, G20, climate clubs, and South-South partnerships. The objective is to ensure all countries, regardless of income, have the tools to pursue low-carbon development. Third, invest in technology and science. We must accelerate the development and deployment of clean technologies, from green hydrogen and carbon capture to nature-based solutions and AI-powered adaptation tools. Cross-border R&D partnerships, innovation funding, and open access platforms will be crucial to reducing costs and scaling solutions. Fourth, strengthening effective governance. Good governance is the backbone of climate action. We must streamline global negotiations through more focused COP agenda, efficient intersessionals, and inclusive formats. Institutions must be better linked across climate, biodiversity, desertification, and pollution to reflect the interconnected nature of today's environmental challenges. At the same time, we must remain pragmatic. President Trump's recently announced import tariffs, though not climate-related, could disrupt renewable energy supply chains and heighten uncertainty. While governments address immediate economic pressures, we must also keep our eyes firmly on our shared long-term obligations to planet and to each other. Korea is committed to reducing emissions by 40% from 2018 levels by 2030 and achieving net zero by 2050. Our renewable electricity share has surpassed 10%, and we are advancing a more ambitious NDC for 2035 and deepening the role of our emissions trading scheme. We are contributing over $600 million to international climate finance and partnering with Japan, ASEAN, Australia, New Zealand, the EU, and Canada to align climate policies and address carbon leakage. At the 2024 Korea-Africa Summit, we committed $7 million to Loss and Damage Fund, demonstrating early and tangible support for those on the front line of climate vulnerability. Korea is also dedicated to serving as a green ladder for developing countries, particularly vulnerable communities in Africa and the Pacific Islands, helping them access the tools, finance, and technologies needed for a just and resilient transition. Under Article 6 of the Paris Agreement, Korea has signed 9 implementation agreements and 9 MOUs to foster carbon markets and promote sustainable development. We are also playing a leading role in the global plastic treaty negotiations, reaffirming our belief that economic growth and environmental protection can advance together. As George Orwell once said, in a time of deceit, telling the truth is revolutionary act. Acknowledging the scale of the crisis and acting with integrity and urgency is not just good policy, it is responsible leadership. Those least responsible for this crisis are bearing its heaviest burdens, from Pacific Islanders facing rising seas to African farmers confronting failed rains. We do not need perfect solutions, only shared commitment. Let us strengthen trust, invest in innovation, and walk together on path toward a sustainable, resilient, and equitable future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Jeong, for explaining Korea's climate-friendly actions to all of us. Now I'm very pleased to introduce the winner of the 2020 Sunhak Peace Prize and former President of Senegal, His Excellency Macky Sall. He served as Prime Minister and President of the National Assembly before becoming President from 2012 to 2024. And he is currently Chair of the Supervisory Board of the Global Center on Adaptation, which is based in the Netherlands. Let us give President Sall a warm welcome.
Dr. Douglas Joe, Dr. Sun Jin Moon, Dr. Hwang, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I will do my session in French. I'm sorry for that. Cette session de notre sommet est consacrée, comme on le sait, au grand défi de notre époque, le changement climatique et l'avenir de notre planète. Il est important de rappeler que nous avons une seule planète, que les questions liées à l'environnement sont des questions globales, que toute solution qui doit être entreprise doit l'être dans le sens de cette vision globale du monde. Il n'est sans doute plus nécessaire de rappeler l'intensification des phénomènes climatiques extrêmes qui menacent nos écosystèmes et qui mettent en péril la vie de millions de personnes à travers le monde. Je ne vous parlerai pas aujourd'hui de l'accord de Paris et des décisions difficiles qui ont été obtenues avec l'engagement de quasiment tous les pays de la planète. Je ne parlerai pas non plus des difficultés actuelles de l'accord sur le retrait des uns, mais aussi la difficulté d'atteindre le financement du climat à travers les financements verts, malgré les efforts qui ont été obtenus. Mais entre les pays développés et les pays en développement, dans les engagements de chaque pays, il y avait la nécessité pour les pays développés, industrialisés, d'agir sur le facteur de l'atténuation, c'est-à-dire comment optimiser leur consommation d'énergie, puisqu'en réalité, ce sont les principaux pollueurs de la planète. Comment faire les efforts pour l'atténuation, et aux pays en développement qui avaient besoin aussi de l'énergie pour leur développement, il fallait qu'ils s'engagent dans l'adaptation. L'adaptation au changement climatique, avoir une agriculture adaptée au changement climatique, une industrie adaptée au changement climatique, une énergie adaptée au changement climatique. C'est la raison pour laquelle nous avions pensé que des efforts devraient être fournis pour accompagner ces pays en développement. Ces bouleversements liés au changement climatique sont désormais une réalité quotidienne sur tous les continents. Et je me limiterai ici juste au cas de l'Afrique. L'Afrique, bien qu'elle ne soit responsable que de moins de 4% des émissions mondiale de gaz à effet de serre, l'Afrique est quand même le continent le plus exposé aux effets du réchauffement climatique. Face à cette injustice, les pays s'efforcent de mettre en œuvre des solutions durables à travers des projets verts, notamment dans le domaine du transport, dans le domaine de l'énergie en particulier. Et faute d'accès suffisant au financement promis, comme je l'ai rappelé, malgré les quelques efforts dans le cadre des engagements internationaux, les projets africains sur le climat sont le plus souvent financés par les pays eux-mêmes et sur la base de crédits très souvent commerciaux, au prix donc d'un endettement croissant qui vient s'ajouter au fardeau de la dette des pays en développement. Ainsi, nos pays qui contribuent le moins à la crise climatique sont contraints de supporter quasiment seuls le coût des conséquences de ces changements climatiques. C'est comme une double peine et une double injustice. Dans le domaine de l'énergie, des solutions avaient été préconisées, justement avec la nécessité de définir une période de transition et ce qu'on a appelé les Just Energy Transition Partnership, les JETP, ont été présentés pas seulement à l'Afrique, mais aux pays en développement de façon générale, pour avoir une opportunité de transition énergétique innovante et équitable par un passage progressif des énergies fossiles vers les énergies renouvelables, en tenant compte, bien sûr, des réalités économiques et sociales locales. À ce niveau, je voudrais aussi m'arrêter pour dire qu'il ne faut pas non plus qu'on fasse l'injustice aux pays en développement en voulant les condamner uniquement au recours à l'énergie renouvelable. Puisque les besoins d'une économie sont importants en matière énergétique et le seul renouvelable ne peut pas, sans transfert de technologie, sans accompagnement, être une solution durable. On doit en effet veiller à ce que les JETP, qui sont une idée géniale et intéressante si elles sont suivies d'effets, il faut veiller à ce que ces JETP ne sacrifient ni les emplois, ni les besoins de développement, je l'ai rappelé tantôt. Et pour être crédibles et efficaces, ces Just Energy Transition Partnership doivent privilégier les financements concessionnels, qui sont devenus rares, encourager les transferts de technologies, et je salue les recommandations de Mme Moon pour ce qu'elle a dit sur la science, qui est un don du ciel, et il faut en faire bon usage. Il faut surtout partager les résultats de la science pour le bénéfice de l'humanité. Il faut également renforcer les capacités locales et garantir une gouvernance inclusive. C'est à ces conditions que ces programmes JETP pourront réellement impulser une transition énergétique juste et durable en Afrique. Et à l'échelle régionale, des réponses, à l'échelle régionale, je parle de l'Afrique, des réponses importantes et essentielles ont été apportées par les États et par la société civile. C'est pourquoi je suis très heureux de constater que notre sœur Wanjira a été lauréate cette année du prix Sénac pour la paix, pour les efforts qu'elle continue à faire après sa regrettée maman. Et une société civile dynamique aussi en Afrique travaille quotidiennement sur l'adaptation et sur les solutions liées à cela. Mais nous avons connu surtout une grande initiative africaine qui a été lancée en 2005, qu'on appelle la Grande Muraille Verte. La Grande Muraille Verte a été lancée par 11 pays de la zone sahélo-sahélienne, saharienne, qui va de l'ouest du Sénégal jusqu'à vers Djibouti. À l'est, c'est sur un rayon de plus de 6000 km. Alors, cette Grande Muraille Verte, qui a pour but d'enrayer l'avancée du désert, le désert du Sahara, par le reboisement, mais aussi par la restauration des terres dégradées, mais également par le développement d'activités agro-sylvopastorales et surtout l'amélioration de la sécurité alimentaire. C'est un projet extrêmement important et cette initiative, d'ailleurs, a désormais a trouvé un écho à l'international, notamment à travers le One Planet Summit, où d'importantes annonces de contributions, si ma mémoire est encore bonne, de plus de 22 milliards de dollars, 22 billions, ont été faites, ce qui mérite d'être salué. Mais là aussi, ce qui fera la différence, c'est vraiment la mise à disposition rapide et efficace de ces ressources pour des actions concrètes au plus près des communautés locales. Continent le plus vulnérable, je n'oublie pas nos amis du Pacifique, des Caraïbes, mais là je me focalise sur l'Afrique. L'Afrique aura pour plus grand défi de s'adapter au changement climatique. Les sécheresses, les inondations, vous l'avez rappelé, M. l'ambassadeur, qui se suivent sans qu'il y ait possibilité de prédire. Donc les agriculteurs sont abandonnés à eux-mêmes d'une année à l'autre ou même au sein d'une même saison. Vous avez des variations erratiques du climat qui font que cette alternance de sécheresse, d'inondations, de tempêtes, ainsi que de vagues de chaleur ont un impact immense sur la vie quotidienne en Afrique, détruisant au passage des vies, des moyens de subsistance, des produits alimentaires, des bâtiments, des infrastructures de développement. Mesdames et messieurs, j'ai eu l'honneur de succéder au secrétaire général Ban Ki-moon. Je voudrais saluer son action à travers le monde, d'abord en tant que 8e secrétaire général des Nations Unies, mais bénévolement, il a dirigé le conseil de surveillance du Centre mondial pour l'adaptation et depuis janvier dernier, j'ai pris le relais et depuis lors, nous travaillons étroitement ensemble pour faire le plaidoyer de l'adaptation dans le monde. Je tenais donc devant vous à saluer son action, son leadership et surtout son dévouement sur l'environnement et le climat. Le Centre mondial pour l'adaptation, JCA, a été le pionnier du plus grand programme d'adaptation au monde en partenariat avec l'Union africaine et la Banque africaine de développement. Ce que nous appelons le programme d'accélération de l'adaptation en Afrique, HJIFEP, lancé en 2021. Et ce programme qui vise à mobiliser 25 milliards de dollars, 25 billions, afin que les systèmes alimentaires africains, les infrastructures critiques, routes, ponts, chemins de fer, etc., et autres services clés puissent continuer à fonctionner dans le cadre des futurs extrêmes climatiques. Alors que la planète risque de se réchauffer de plus de 1,5 degré Celsius dans un avenir proche, nous devons continuer à accroître nos ambitions en matière d'adaptation. L'Afrique est ouverte à des partenariats avec tous ceux qui souhaitent l'accompagner sur le chemin de la résilience. Nous sollicitons également plus spécifiquement de nouveaux partenaires pour nous accompagner dans une deuxième phase du HJIFEP, ce qu'on appelait le HJIFEP 2.0, qui est indispensable donc à la sauvegarde de notre développement et de la sécurité de notre région face au choc climatique. Pour conclure, je dirais que le combat de l'Afrique contre le réchauffement climatique doit être perçu comme une bataille solidaire. Il ne s'agit pas pour l'Afrique de tendre la main. Je l'ai dit, nous sommes une seule et même planète. Et l'apport de l'Afrique, ne serait-ce que sur le bassin du Congo, comme poumon vert de la planète, aux côtés de l'Amazonie et du bassin du Mekong, je crois que ça, ce sont vraiment des vrais puits de carbone pour l'humanité. Donc ce combat ne doit pas être perçu comme une bataille, doit être perçue plutôt comme une bataille solidaire auprès de ce continent qui pollue le moins et qui veut contribuer à l'effort mondial de réduction de gaz à effet de serre, mais il ne doit pas être contraint de choisir entre le développement et la protection de l'environnement. Et c'est pourquoi je m'étais inscrit en faux contre la déclaration de Glasgow des pays industrialisés qui avaient décidé de manière unilatérale qu'ils ne financeraient plus les énergies fossiles en dehors du périmètre de leur pays. Ça, c'était, encore une fois, condamner les pays en développement alors qu'ils n'étaient pas responsables de la situation qui nous arrive. Nous devons donc, en contrepartie des efforts, il est important que le continent soit accompagné en soutenant le financement de l'action climatique. Enfin, c'est ensemble, dans un esprit de partenariat solidaire, à la hauteur de l'enjeu et de l'urgence, que nous pourrons bâtir un avenir durable pour la planète que nous avons en partage. Je vous remercie de votre attention.
Thank you very much, President Sall, for sharing the challenges and the opportunities that are facing African nations. Now it is time to begin our first in-depth session on the topic Climate Change, Environmental Crises, and the International Community's Response. The chair for this session will be Professor GunWoong Bahang. Professor Bahang is chair of the Department of Mechanical Engineering at the State University of New York's Korea branch, located in Incheon. He was a principal research scientist for over 2 decades at the Korea Research Institute of Standards and Science. He also served as director of that institute's Office of Global Partnership. Let's now welcome Professor Bahang and turn the program over to him.
Thank you very much for your introduction. Now we will start the first session meeting, and we'll have 2 topics. And the first topic is about climate change, environmental crisis, and the future of the Earth. And the first, let me see. Climate change, environment crisis, and international community response and its limitation. And the second topic is about advances in science and technology and the demand for a new world view. The presentation on the first topic will be delivered by Professor Soonchang, Yoon, my left-hand side. And he is a professor emeritus, Seoul National University. He graduated from the Seoul National University with a major in physics and earned a master and PhD degrees from the Oregon State University, majoring in atmospheric science. He wrote several introductory books on environment protection and climate change, such as How to Save Earth. Of course, it's written in Korean for the general public. And then after this presentation, we'll have a commentary on this presentation by Dr. Suh-Yong Chung. He's a professor of Korea University, Division of International Studies. So we'll have a discussion session after this presentation for the 17 minutes or so. So let's welcome Dr. Yoon for the presentations.
Thank you, Professor Bahang. Honorable world leaders, diplomats, colleagues, and concerned citizens of our global community. It is my great honor to address the participants of the World Summit 2025 on the topic of climate change and the environmental crisis. Well, I apologize for my croaky voice, but I have a bit of cold with coughing. Well, the Industrial Revolution, originating in England around the mid-1700s, triggered unprecedented industrialization and urbanization worldwide. While this revolution brought progress, the increased reliance on fossil fuels and the industrial processes has led to pollution and environmental crisis, jeopardizing our planet's sustainability. Today, we face severe air pollution, primarily from the burning of fossil fuels and industrial activities, causing millions of premature deaths each year. We are also witnessing climate change driven by the accumulation of greenhouse gases, causing global temperature to rise and intensifying extreme weather events like heat waves, wildfires, droughts, floods, and typhoons or hurricanes. My presentation will examine the threats of air pollution and climate changes and discuss the achievements and limitations of international efforts to address these crises. The lower layer of the Earth's atmosphere, namely troposphere, about 10 kilometers thick, is like a very thin film of air compared to the radius of the Earth, about 6,400 kilometers. So it gets easily contaminated by air pollution gases emitted from the ground. Where I'm supposed to point laser? Yeah, there. All right. Nitrogen, oxygen, and argon gases are making up 99.9% of the dry air. The remaining 0.1% contains elements like greenhouse gases and air pollution gases. Let's begin by examining one of the most immediate threats, air pollution. Air pollution has a devastating impact on global health. Particulate matters. Can I see? Oops. Okay. Particulate matters smaller than 2.5 micrometers, or PM 2.5, enters into the lungs and causes diseases in lungs, hearts, and brain. According to the 2024 WHO report, outdoor air pollution alone was responsible for 4.2 million premature deaths per year. Excuse me. With the particles smaller than 2.5 micrometers being the primary culprit. Indoor air pollution is also responsible for an estimated 3.2 million deaths per year. Okay, the WHO estimates that in 2019, 68% of these deaths were, the outdoor effect, were due to heart disease and stroke, 14% to chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, another 14% to lower respiratory infections, and 4% to lungs cancer. The cause of the deaths from household air pollutions or indoor air pollutions are similar to those from outdoor pollution. Emerging research highlights the danger of ultrafine particulate matter, particles smaller than 0.1 micrometers. These tiny particles can penetrate the blood-brain barrier and potentially contribute to neurological disorders, including Alzheimer's dementia, Parkinson's disease, and even chronic depression and juvenile suicide. Now let's turn our attention to other great environmental crises of our time, climate change. Since 1958, Dr. Charles Keeyong has been measuring CO2 concentrations in the atmosphere. His work conducted at the Mauna Loa Observatory in Hawaii revealed a seasonal fluctuation and a consistent annual increase in carbon dioxide levels. The resulting graph, known as the Keeyong curve, is the powerful visual representation of the rising CO2 trend. I-square data confirms that carbon dioxide levels have not exceeded 300 ppms in the last 800,000 years. And the global temperature has been rising after 1900 and rapidly rising after 1960 because of the massive industrialization of the whole world after World War II. The satellite data shows that the land ice sheets in Antarctica are losing mass. And sea levels have risen by about 20 centimeters since 1900. And the rate of rise is accelerating. These changes are leading to more frequent and intense heat waves, increased risk of wildfires, more severe droughts, floods, and stronger storms. The evidence for this warming is irrefutable. Human activities are the dominant driver of this increase and the subsequent rise in global temperature. To understand to understand climate change, we need to understand some basic physical laws. Every object emits energy in the form of electromagnetic waves. And the intensity of this radiation is related to its temperature. Earth's temperature is determined by the balance between the incoming solar radiation and outgoing Earth radiation, or terrestrial radiation. If the air does not include any greenhouse gases on the left side of the picture, the equilibrium temperature would be minus 18 degrees in Celsius, below zero. Would be very cold. Greenhouses in our atmosphere act like a thermal blanket, so the average global temperature with current greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, the mean temperature is about 15 degrees in Celsius. Radiation budget of the Earth is more complicated because of the clouds and aerosols in the atmosphere, absorption and scattering by aerosols and clouds, and precipitations, and so on. The international community has recognized the urgency of this crisis and has taken steps to address it. The International Panel on Climate Change, or IPCC, established in 1988, plays a critical role in assessing the science of climate change. Its key roles are assessing the scientific basis of climate change, including its cause, impacts, risks, and options for adaptation and mitigation. Providing objective and transparent information based on the best available scientific evidence produced through rigorous review processes. Informing policymaking at all levels by providing a scientific basis for climate policies and negotiations. Raising public awareness and understanding of climate change to empower individuals and communities to take action. A landmark event in the global effort was the 1992 Earth Summit in Rio, in Brazil. This summit brought together leaders from 179 countries and adopted the Rio Declaration on Environmental Development, emphasizing environmentally sound and sustainable development. It also adopted the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, or UNFCCC, to stabilize greenhouse gas concentrations, to prevent the dangerous anthropogenic climate change, and to facilitate international responses to global warming. The Conference of the Parties, or COP, the UNFCCC's supreme decision-making body, has met annually since 1995, leading to agreements like the Kyoto Protocol, Kyoto Protocol in 1997, which sets legal binding emission reduction targets for developed countries, and the Paris Agreement in 2015 that aims to keep global temperature rise well below 2 degrees Celsius, above pre-industrial levels, and to pursue efforts to limit the increase of 1.5 degrees Celsius. The Paris Agreement, adopted in 2015, is a landmark international accord with the goal of limiting global warming to well below 2 degrees and pursuing efforts to limit it to 1.5 above pre-industrial levels. It established nationally determined contributions, or NDCs, where each country outlines its emission reduction and adaptation commitments to reducing emissions. NDCs are to be updated every 5 years, with each update aiming to be more ambitious than previous one. The agreement also emphasizes climate finance, with development countries committing to providing financial resources to developed countries for mitigation and adaptation. However, despite these achievements, significant challenges remain. The IPCC report warns that to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees, greenhouse gas emissions must peak before 2025, this year at the latest. And we need drastic emission reduction by 2030 and net zero emissions by around 2050. However, global carbon emissions from fossil fuels reached a record high in 2024, last year. And there is still no sign that the world has reached a peak in fossil carbon dioxide emissions. Parties to the Paris Agreement are required to submit updated national climate plans, NDCs, every 5 years to the UNFCCC's Secretariat since 2020. However, as of the February 10th of this year deadline, 2025 deadline, only 13 countries out of 195 countries have submitted updated NDCs. And Trump administration's policies on climate changes are to withdraw from the Paris Agreement and similar UNFCCC's commitments, including the IPCC activities, and to rescind the U.S. International Climate Finance Plan, including $4 billion that was pledged to the Green Climate Fund by the Obama and Biden administrations, and to increase fossil fuel production in the U.S. by deregulation and opening up more federal lands for drilling, which have potentially to encourage other nations to disengage from the international climate obligations, eventually to increase emissions, jeopardizing international cooperation to reduce emissions for a sustainable future. Delaying actions of the U.S. will only increase their risks and cost of climate change. A carbon brief analysis estimated that Trump administration could add 4 billion tons to U.S. emissions by 2030. My closing remarks.
Thank you.
This is my final remarks. The Paris Agreement's mechanism of updated NDCs, while intended to drive ambition, has so far fallen short. As of the February 10th of 2025 deadline, only a small fraction of nations have submitted updated plans, and even these often lack the necessary ambitions to meet the agreement's goals. Furthermore, the anticipated surge in electricity demand driven by the AI era necessitates an even more rapid and comprehensive transition to clean energy sources, a transition that faces significant political, economic, and technological hurdles. While international collaboration is undeniably crucial, its current form and the level of ambitions are insufficient to avert the most catastrophic consequences of climate change and environmental degradation. We must acknowledge urgently implemented global action if we are to secure a sustainable future for all. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Yoon. He described the climate change and the current situation of the global cooperation to deal with the climate crisis. Unfortunately, the global cooperation is not so much effective based on the current situation right now. It is really a big challenge for all of us. So we will hear the commentary on this topic by the Professor Chung. Please.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Chung Suh-Yong, professor at Korea University. My expertise lies, I'm trained by the law and political science and then working extensively with not only Korean governments, also foreign governments and then international organizations as well. I've been working on the climate issues for the last 3 years or so already. I think I'm getting old, and then still trying to make sure that despite the sort of the disruption that we are experiencing, not only due to the sort of the President Trump's administration in the United States, also some other factors that has drawn our attention to this world. Still, climate is just a matter of our survival. There should be no compromise with the current political situations, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we can just go on and on. There should be additional efforts that needs to be put forward by among us like today, so that we make sure that our children in the future can live on this earth with peace and prosperity. I especially would like to express my great thanks to Dr. Moon Sun-jin and also Dr. Douglas Ju for your invitation to this conference. So I've been thinking about what is the best way to provide my comments with a short period of time, and then thinking about listening to the sort of the opening remarks and the special speeches, also prior presentation. First of all, as I said, the climate is nothing in the sense of whether or not we can make some sort of compromise on. So that's the bottom line. Climate, we have only one single climate system on the earth, which means that it is a global public good. Right? We are talking about the AI and we are talking about war, conflicts, and others. They are not the issues of the global public goods. But this is a global public good issue, which means that from the beginning, we have to work together, right? As if we are one single person or actor. Otherwise, we cannot solve the problem. So as I said, even if there is some impacts by the President Trump's administration in the United States especially, but from the climate angle, I don't see that is not that as serious as we might have heard about. One good example is that as President from the Senegal mentioned that the climate Paris Agreement is the founding and then constitutional document to deal with the climate in the world, and then it already focuses on the developing world, right? And then every systems that we are talking about through the Paris Agreement actually focuses on the developing countries. Why is that? Because developed countries, they have a relatively good capability by themselves to address the climate change at their domestic level. So global efforts that we need to discuss about is how to work together with the developing countries. There are good reasons. Fellows from the Africa and then Latin America and South Asia used to say we are in danger. And then, so you have to help us. There is a historical responsibility issues, common but different responsibility issues. I do understand, but they are not sufficient enough, actually, to draw the attention and then efforts from the developed world. There is another significant indication, which says that as of 2100, there is a lot more potential emissions will come from the developing world. Because as I said, the developed countries because they have relatively good capability to deal with the climate change, so their emission level will stabilize. However, as we see in Africa, I know that many countries, their annual growth is 7%, 10% now, as Republic of Korea used to do in the 1970s. So there is an increasing growth. But the question is then if they would go on, and not only African countries, also China and India, Indonesia, Brazil, South Africa, there will be a significant emissions, right? So there should be another efforts for the future to ensure their sustainable development. At the same time, how we can actually reduce greenhouse gas emissions by developing countries as well. So when I see the issues for the developing countries, I don't necessarily see that climate issues only for the adaptation in Africa. That's now and the past. And then I'm sure that the developing countries in the world would like to grow economy like Korea, right? That's why you are here, right? Otherwise, you don't have to be here. And then in the sense that African strategy on climate change and the Latin American strategy on climate change should incorporate not only adaptation issues, also mitigation issues as well. In the sense that the Paris Agreement provides very good potential answers on how we can actually mix the various policy measures to meet that goal. If you have a material that you have, it has been distributed, if we go to page 43, I will give you a quick summary for 1 minute about the Paris Agreement. Okay, you see table 1, structure of the Paris Agreement. Did you find it? Yes. So Paris Agreement, if you go to Article 2 of the Paris Agreement, there are 3 purposes, which many people don't know. First, mitigation. Second, adaptation. That's what we all know, but there is one more. That's ensuring finance floor. Meaning, I already say the Paris Agreement, different from the Kyoto Protocol, which is about imposing legally binding obligations to the countries. That has been seen as a matter of the cost. However, Paris Agreement changed the whole paradigm by putting the money so that we can generate the real opportunities. So in the sense that there are 3 purposes. So most importantly, ensuring financial flow is very, very important. There are 6 elements to operationalize the Paris Agreement: mitigation, adaptation, then, as you can see, finance, technology, and capacity building. President from Senegal introduced in Africa, there is a very importance of the forestry and agriculture. I know that very well because my team that developed the first Korean ODA in climate issues in Ethiopia. I also help out the government of Gabon to conclude a bilateral treaty with the Republic of Korea. So I'm very well aware of it. That means forestry, agriculture are the driving forces of sustainable development in Africa, but still, you need to have money, right? When Korea was in 1970s, we started to focus on the reforestation, and then we moved to heavy industry, and then now we are leading countries of various advanced technologies, including IT and AI. So you have to identify your technologies, and the financing is necessary. Most of part of finance actually come from your domestic pocket, not from the outside. Outside financing can be a sort of additional inputs for your study to better mobilize your domestic efforts. Everything must be done domestically. Then question is how? That's why Paris Agreement the 5th capacity building comes in. So Paris Agreement can provide the sort of the assistance programs to developing countries on how to achieve all of this. We call this finance, technology, capacity building as a means of implementation. Okay, so as you can see, it's about creating opportunities. It's not about sharing the pains, right? So Paris Agreement in that sense is very different. In that sense, as a joke, if somebody asked me, hey, Professor Chung, what is the implications of the President Trump's withdrawal from the Paris Agreement? My usual answer on that is that, I think the President Trump is very brave. Which means, in Korean sayings, if you don't know anything, you can be very brave, right? If you translate it, you know what I'm saying. Because
maybe President Trump doesn't know that the Paris Agreement is all about the incentivizing system. And then if we want to enjoy it, you must be a member country. Otherwise, you cannot enjoy it. Right? I already see that negative impact by withdrawing from the Paris Agreement by the United States, because already, for instance, China took it as a matter of the big opportunity for them to actually to dominate, using and working on the Paris Agreement to tackle climate change. So we have to ensure that. And then I'm running out of time, maybe 2 more minutes. If we go to page 44, then what are the technologies that we can deploy at the global level, right? You see table 2, and then it shows the various low carbon and carbon neutral technologies that must be deployed at the international level, from the using LED, because LED lighting consumes only 10% of the electricity, which means that you can save emission by 90%. Right? There are other advanced technologies such as CCS and others, right? If you deploy all these technologies, you can meet the 2-degree target. At the same time, you can create 2 to 8% of the global GDP, new market. So question is, are we all united here to enjoy these opportunities? In the end, we can address climate change, officially meeting the 2-degree target, and then we are aiming to even achieving 1.5 target, right? So in the sense that countries need to be united, and then especially as a Korean national, as Ambassador Chung has introduced, Korea has a great vision to work with not only developing countries, also developed countries to enjoy all these benefits coming from the Paris Agreement. Therefore, no matter what happens at this time in the world politics, we should continue to work on climate change issues. So I stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, dear. Well, thank you very much, Professor Yoon and Chung, for the presentation and the commentary. And now we have a discussion on this topic 1, but we do not have enough time. We are very much delayed, behind the schedule. So I'd like to limit the questions only 2 persons. I'm sorry about that. So 2 questions. Yeah. Please, dear, speak your names and make your question very clear and short. Don't make long question.
Thank you. Thank you for your nice presentation, Professor Yoon. I met you many years ago in Seoul. I'm Honorary Professor HyoJeong of Gangwon National University in Korea, and the board member of the HyoJeong International Foundation for Environmental Peace. In October 2024, the United States witnessed the landfall of Hurricane Milton, the worst in a century, which caused the power of outage for approximately 2.6 million households and forced the evacuation of millions of people. This pattern of flooding in one region and drought in another is a defining characteristic of the modern climate crisis. Global warming triggers a cascade of disaster across the world ecosystem and the human civilization. As the glaciers melt, sea level rise, leading coastal flooding. Extreme weather events are reducing crop yields, diminish biodiversity, and increasing complex risks such as the spread of disease. Reducing crop yields, diminishing biodiversity, and increasing complex risks such as the spread of disease. According to the UN analysis, the economic losses caused by these climate change are estimated to reach hundreds of billions of dollars annually. In this year, there was a big forest fire at the region of Gyeongbuk province in Korea. About the forest area of about 48,000 hectares were burned only in Gyeongbuk province area. The forest fire made the loss of 30 lives. Recently in Korea, the forest fire is making larger and larger. It is said that the cause of this enlargement of forest fire is also climate change. But there are so many other reasons about the enlargement of the forest fire in Korea. Here, I want to ask you one question, Professor Yoon. How to mitigate the climate change in our real life? Thank you very much.
So your question is, how do I mitigate climate change in my life? Well, personally, I think each person can do their best to reduce greenhouse gases emission, which is by saving energy, like electricity and domestic heatings, and also use public transportations. I think those are what ordinary people can contribute to the reduction of, mitigation of climate change. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that that's the question to the not only the Professor Yoon, but for all of us, asking each one of you to think about what I can do. Well, one more question from the floor. Oh, okay.
Yes, hi. My name is Chris Wright from the Artificial Intelligence Trust Council. Artificial intelligence has the potential to destroy humanity, and just wondering how that fits into this program.
So you are talking about AI, right?
Yes.
Yes. There are both sides, good part and not good part. So for instance, a super AI operating system consumes 48 times more electricity than the current situation. So it's a very negative side because it may raise the very serious issues regarding how we're gonna meet that energy demand, considering that the decarbonized electric system has not been yet completely available on the earth. So we should find a way of how to address this. Good part is that using the AI, it can bring us a sort of the good opportunities to better measure emission level using the GIS technologies and some other advanced AI-based technologies. So we need to develop the sort of balanced approach how we can best, use of AI, but not bringing the negative impact on addressing climate change.
Very good. Yeah, I suggest that an IQ throttle be the way forward. And that can be done through a blockchain voting mechanism at the local level. So if you put a blockchain voting mechanism in the hands of the people, they can say, I would like the IQ to be at this level, or very low. And what that can do is that can help the economy and retain jobs without the massive disruption.
That is one of possibilities, of course, yes.
Thank you. Unfortunately, because of our delayed program, so I have to finish the discussion right now. And I think that regarding the AI is that we have to think about that. The demand on the electricity is expected to increase very sharply because of the increased use of the AI. So that's one factor that we have to think about that. Okay. Thank you for you.
Hello. Thank you very much, Professor Bahang, Professor Yoon, and Dr. Chung for that informative exchange. And now, if you'd like to take your seats. It is now my honor to introduce to you one of the winners of this year's Sunhack Peace Prize. Ms. Wanjira Matai is a leader in environmental conservation and sustainable development across Africa. She serves as Managing Director for Africa and Global Partnerships for the World Resources Institute, Chair and Director of the Greenbelt Movement, Program Leader for Women Entrepreneurs in Renewables, and Africa Advisor for the Bezos Earth Fund. Let's welcome her to share her story.
I have to say I absolutely enjoyed that panel. Professor Yoon and Professor Chung, you're probably some of the most clearest, succinct. It was the best masterclass on climate I've heard. Please, another round of applause for that panel. It's important because so often those of us in climate leadership are told that we are talking to ourselves. We don't explain things, we don't break things down in understandable packets. It's so important how we communicate. I also want to appreciate that last question on AI and AI from the AI Trust because, and President Macky Sall is here, one of our dearest presidents on the African continent. He spent a lot of time on the energy transition, but the reality is Africa is the hub of renewable energy, the best solar potential in the world. And if the AI community is not thinking about domiciling a lot of these data hubs that consume so much energy where the sun shines, then the future is really bleak. So I really hope that part of the partnerships we discuss here will be about ensuring that Africa's green competitive advantage is at the center of the climate solutions of the future. That has to be, and in fact, the world will not achieve its climate solutions if Africa is not at the heart of them. And that is a really good example of one of them. But first of all, I want to thank all of you who are here, the leaders, certainly for celebrating us. We are still basking in the light of the prize and the ceremony that was yesterday. Really, really grateful. I really like the topic of this session, climate change, environment crisis, and the future of the earth. So often I see the future of the earth at the center of what we are discussing. But the reality is, it is the future of humanity. It is our future. The future, the earth will be just fine, actually. You know, people have always said that we are here to save the earth. We're actually here to save ourselves. And it's really important that we center the role that we play, but also that this is about our future and our humanity. My mother so often used to say that the earth is our life support system. It is what we need to survive. And God, in his or her wisdom, created everything we needed first and then created us. It was not by mistake, because can you imagine if we had been created on Monday and then Tuesday, the rest of the things we need, we may have not survived past Wednesday. So I really appreciate the fact that the future of the earth is so often at the center of what we're talking about, but it really is the center of humankind. I cannot tell you how many times people ask me, what is the choice we have to make? And it was mentioned here, between the environmental sustainability and development. It is a false choice. As we have seen, and I had asked for a photograph to be put up. Yes, you can look at that. It's the only slide I have, because it's the only message I have. That actually, it is a false choice. If we destroy the planet, we will have nothing to build these future economies on. The economies we are so focused on, and the future we are so focused on, and I'm so glad the science was broken down And on top of all of that, the science of attribution has gotten so good that we know with such strong precision the impact of the damage we are causing to the planet right now and what that will mean for us. So it is not a choice we're making. We're actually making a choice for whether we want to build into the future or we want to lapse into the past. Every time I talk to leaders in climate and environment and development like us and like myself across the global south, in Latin America, across Africa, across Asia, across the Pacific, we all seem to share a certain common understanding that is encapsulated in the concept of equal but differentiated responsibility, that yes, we are all in this together, but actually the emissions drama and the emissions challenge is not for the global south to solve. But it is also true that the impacts of climate on the global south are significant. Take a look at these data on sub-Saharan Africa. Sub-Saharan Africa is warming faster than the global average. And so extreme heat, floods, and drought are likely to hit us the most, even though, as we heard from President Macky Sall, that we are only responsible for 4% of global emissions. Close to 70% of African cities are projected to face extreme climate and water-related risks. Extreme. 57% of urban residents on the African continent do not have access to safe drinking water. And the cost of climate-related infrastructure, the damage that that infrastructure will face, is going to reach up to $140 billion a year by 2050. Imagine the burden on that. Who are we kidding? So this is why for so many, especially for the young African population, it is so confusing that if these data are there, if this is really true, why aren't our policies aligned? Why isn't the urgency of the crisis on top of every legislator's voice? Why don't we hear those sorts of interventions and cries in Parliament when we know that the future of Africa and Africa's growth by 2050 will be urban? Our cities will be where most of us live. The bulk of our cities are still unplanned. We know that close to 70% of the infrastructure needed for Africa by 2050 has not yet been built. We should be thinking so carefully about what that looks like in the face of the reality of the challenges that we have. So who's listening? I really hope that we can leave this place, the legislators that are here, the senators that are here, heads of state and former heads of state that are here, really charged to not only be rolling in the daily hum of everything that goes on around us, but to align our policies and to ensure that this reality that we are fighting for our children and our children's children, is anchored in everything that we do. Dr. Moon, I really loved your statement this morning, and especially the fact that your mother and the founder is so clear about the importance of caring. Underpinning everything we do is an assumption that we care. Because actually, if we don't care, then it's fine. It's okay, we can do what we want, and the children will take care of themselves. But if we do care, then it behooves us to plan differently, to think differently, and to show up differently. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Matai, for those very beautiful and inspiring words. Now we move on to the second in-depth session of this morning's conference. This session will be chaired once again by Professor GunWoong. Let's invite Professor Bang and the two panelists to please come to the stage.
Thank you. We'll have the second session. The second topic is advances in science and technology and the demand for a new world view. I think that is very important. The presentation that will be delivered by Professor Cliff Davison, Professor of the Emeritus Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering, Syracuse University in New York State. Professor Davison graduated from the Carnegie Mellon University in 1972 and earned master's and PhD degrees from the California Institute of Technology, the Caltech, in environmental engineering science. He is affiliated in Center of Excellence in Environmental and Energy Systems and works as a director, Center for Sustainable Engineering. After his presentation, this commentary by Professor Arnold Loren will follow. He is a professor of the Seoul Core Laboratory, CNRS Paul Sabatier University, Toulouse, France. My right-hand side. After this commentary, we will have a discussion session, but I hope that we would have time to discuss about it. Thank you, Professor Loren Davison.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Bahang, for that introduction. And I would like to begin by thanking Dr. Douglas Ju and Dr. Junyoung Cha for the invitation to come. I also want to mention that with regard to Dr. Soonchang Yoon's talk, what he said about Trump's policies are absolutely accurate and correct, but not all Americans are 100% behind President Trump. So I just want to make that very clear right from the start. Okay, so we are going to begin with this talk. Advances in science and technology, demand for a new world view. We're going to start with an introduction. Then we'll talk about the history of science and technology, which is extremely important so that we can learn from history. Then we'll talk about the changes in impacts and human attitudes toward the environmental crisis, and then finally we'll talk about working towards solutions. Okay, what is sustainability? Well, the one definition that has really stuck over time is that of the World Commission on Environment and Development, which is development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And very quickly after that definition was adopted, it was realized that we have to define sustainability in terms of all three prongs: economic, and social, and environmental as well. Some of you may recognize this individual. This is Vice President Al Gore, who was Vice President under Bill Clinton in the 1990s, and his movie An Inconvenient Truth about climate change, which really opened up the minds of people all over the planet to what we're facing. There are three things that we want to talk about with regard to sustainability. First of all, the use of resources, and that's an emphasis on non-renewable resources, particularly fossil fuels. In addition, the use of renewable resources, but unfortunately, we are using those renewable resources, and I guess forests and logging would be a good example. We're using those faster than nature can replace them. So this is a big problem. Secondly, accumulation of wastes. We cannot make the wastes disappear. Where do we put them? And then finally, damage to the environment. And by this, I'm talking about unintended consequences, not necessarily deliberate damage. And actually, chlorofluorocarbons are a good example of unintended consequences. As we know, chlorofluorocarbons were miraculous for an improvement on refrigeration methods and fire retardants, but in fact, we had no idea that they would cause the ozone hole. So this is a really serious example. And there are lots of other examples. Climate change is one, decreasing biodiversity is another, and with all of the animal management that is taking place around the world, and I'm talking about beef and pork and lamb and so forth, we are increasing the risks significantly for global pandemics. And COVID is just one example. Okay, also by way of introduction, I want to point out that these problems that we face are mostly systems level problems. There are not individual choices that we can easily unmake. We are talking about our systems of economics, our legal system, political systems, social systems are unable to solve these problems. And today's activities, including all of the traveling that we do, for example, all of us traveling long distances to come here, we have to recognize that this is not making the situation better, that in fact we have to come up with innovative solutions so that we do not suffer major disruptions. As a result, we have to adopt a new worldview. This cannot be done incrementally, and this is one of the big issues that we face, is that politicians, of course, find it very difficult to suggest more than incremental changes. And what we really need are large-scale changes, and this is risky, and of course, politicians like to avoid risk, but the biggest risk of all that we face now is if we do nothing about this problem. So this all reflects the need for change, and that means the need for a new worldview. Okay, I mentioned history. History is extremely important here, and if we look at human civilization through history, what we see is that civilization has advanced mainly through the adoption of technologies, innovative technologies. And we see that ancient civilizations have produced remarkable results, remarkable achievements. Clearly, the pyramids of Egypt are one example. The Parthenon in ancient Greece, and the Colosseum in Rome. This shows what humans are capable of. We are capable of solving this problem. We just need to move forward with it. Humans are remarkable individuals, but we have to tap into that remarkability right now. In addition, we heard a little bit from Dr. Soonchang Yoon about the Industrial Revolution, and that was a turning point in the history of the world, for sure. This is a drawing, actually, of James Watt's steam engine, which is what made enormous transformations in the world. We know transportation has improved greatly because of technology. Energy production has expanded greatly. Communications are faster than they've ever been before. And information processing has grown to improve life all the way across the planet. So technology has enabled us to do great things. However, technology has also caused a lot of the environmental damage that we see now. Beginning in the Industrial Revolution, the scale of resource extraction grew exponentially. And that makes sense because the steam engine was able to process raw materials into finished products faster than manual labor could, and that means we were using up resources faster than ever before. But of course, we were able to produce products for the world's population, and we were able to do so efficiently. But we have to think about the environmental damage as well. And in fact, going back to what followed the Industrial Revolution, which was the colonial period, we know that environmental damage occurred both in the colonies through monoculture farming, through mining. A lot of that was open pit mining, and of course that devastates ecosystems. And especially important, and this is really, really important, is that we learned about social sustainability and the need for it when the mass enslavement of people began back shortly after the Industrial Revolution in the colonial era. And that's something that just has to be fought against in every possible way. In the Western Europe, where the factories were, we had different kinds of environmental damage. And that was severe air and water pollution and very dangerous working conditions, as well as child labor, which is another example of a lack of social sustainability. Okay, science and technology requires the materials and energy in order to make the products. And we can look through history and see that every single organization every single civilization has suffered from deforestation. This has been universal. We have to recognize that problem. So we're not the first civilization on the planet to be resource limited. It began right at the beginning. In addition, building cities in floodplains is guaranteed to cause loss of life and property. The picture on the lower right is of New Orleans, an aerial photograph from NOAA of New Orleans right following the Katrina hurricane. So these are very serious problems today. Overall, we have overhunted, we have overfished, and we have over-extracted. And that has brought on the tragedy of the commons by Garrett Hardin. And this is something that, again, we have to recognize that when we are dealing with global commons, and all of us are dealing with global commons, that we have to think about the greater good. Okay, now the third part of the talk is on human attitudes. It is absolutely the truth, if you look back through history, that humans have always extracted resources without truly thinking about the consequences of doing that. So that's a big problem. This occurred all the way up into the 18th and 19th centuries, including up to the Romantic period in the United Kingdom, where literature emphasized the beauty of nature. Lots of famous poets and writers illustrated to us the importance of regarding nature as a source of beauty and something we had to respect above all else. In the USA, we had a number of environmental writers talking about why we had to preserve the environment, as well as the link between the science and technology and our faith. And I do want to emphasize that our faith is very important here. This is the time of the rise of the first pro-environmental organizations, such as the Sierra Club and many other environmental organizations that have been struggling and trying to show the importance of respecting the environment, and especially of the Universal Peace Federation. Very, very important. Okay, now, in terms of turning points, one big turning point, and this was a surprise, was the beginning of the space program, when in fact we had the Apollo astronauts flying up into space, circling the Earth, and flying even all the way to the moon. And I want to call attention to the Apollo 11 launch, which had 3 famous astronauts, Neil Armstrong, Michael Collins, and Edwin Aldrin, and also Apollo 17, where they took the blue marble photo, which influenced people like no other photo before. This was in 1972, and there are still images being produced. That blue marble photo, I should say, really enabled the entire planet to see how fragile the planet Earth is and why it needed to be preserved. There have been writers and organizations who have influenced human attitudes. I'll mention Rachel Carson in Silent Spring, who led a tremendous environmental movement in the US, and that spread to the rest of the world. There's also the World Commission on Environment Development, and that was led by Gro Harlem Brundtland, the Prime Minister of Norway. There's also the Business Council on Sustainable Development. And the reason why I want to mention that is because that report was the first to point out that we have to work with businesses because the wealth of the world depends on converting natural resources to things that humans need. And that wealth has to be used now in a different way so that we can solve these environmental crises. If we don't have the businesses on board, we're not going to succeed. And then, of course, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, as already mentioned in this session, and their most recent assessment, which is the 6th assessment from 2023. Okay, solutions to our environmental crisis. In the couple of minutes remaining, I want to mention that we really need guidelines, and there have been multiple guidelines set up by organizations around the world. The natural step, which originated in Sweden in 1997, decreed that we must avoid the buildup of materials acquired from the Earth's crust, and we also must not manufacture chemicals or materials unknown in nature. I'm not sure if people are aware of how many chemicals we have that are unknown in nature, but it exceeds 100,000 today. And in fact, there are more than 1,000 new chemicals every year that are created. We don't know the consequences of that. These are unintended consequences. Also, I want to call attention to the 12 Principles of Green Engineering by Paul Anastas and Julie Zimmerman at Yale University. Make no products that result in waste. We have to do 100% recycling and reusing, and make no products that last indefinitely. And CFCs are a good example of products that were deliberately designed to last as long as possible. We have to be able to have everything we make degrade. Following after nature, this is how nature has been able to be sustainable for billions of years. This graph shows raw material use in the US. So you can see this is not a minor problem, that the top curve there is construction materials. Most of that would be concrete and cement. We have minerals that are used by industries, which is that orange area. And that would be things like limestone for making gypsum and sand for making glass and so forth. The blue curves are metals, all different kinds of metals. And then you can see the red region in there. That is essentially petroleum. Okay, so how can we solve our environmental crisis? We need to be thinking about life cycle assessment in order to make environmentally sound decisions. We also need to consider the circular economy. This is the way nature works. Nature doesn't recycle 99%. It recycles 100.0%. And we have to be thinking along those lines. So we have to think about a circular economy: reduce, reuse, recycle, modeling industries after ecosystems, which is the field of industrial ecology, and biomimicry, which is founded by Janine Benyus. All of these areas are extremely important. We cannot have the linear relationship that we see at the bottom of this slide, going from extraction through manufacturing and use of products, and then finally to disposal. We have to change that to be a circular economy. And we have to decrease greenhouse gases. And that basically means replacing fossil fuels with renewables. We need to promote biodiversity. And that problem is because we are using more and more land. And education is so important. And here I want to call attention to the 3 Soonchang Prize winners, including Wanjiri Mathai, who is here. And it was very interesting that all 3 of the Soonchang Prize winners talked about education. And in fact, one of the Soonchang Prize winners had education as his main goal to set up a university in Africa for the African continent. So education, the importance of education cannot be overemphasized. It is critical. And we have to understand the limitations of science and technology. And that means that we have to understand that we will never have a free lunch in terms of being able to create energy where energy doesn't exist before. All we can do is change the form of energy. And furthermore, when we change the form of energy, the second law of thermodynamics tells us that there is going to be loss. There's always loss of energy. We have to account for that in all the decisions that we make. And lastly, the UN Sustainable Development Goals are important. And I have to emphasize the most important goal is that we have to greatly reduce poverty. We cannot have environmental sustainability if we have massive poverty on the planet, because if people are barely surviving, we can't ask them to give up things for preservation of the environment. So we simply have to solve that problem. So by way of conclusions, human civilization has overcome enormous obstacles in the past. And we have enormous amount to be proud of. And I think that we have celebrated a lot of what we have to be proud of here at this very, very important conference. We have to recognize we've also done severe damage to the environment in order to reach this level. However, the good news is that nature will recover if given a chance. And we've seen that repeatedly in past civilizations who have done environmental destruction, and then when that civilization dies, the environment has a rebirth. Giving up is not an option. Solving our environmental crisis is an absolute necessity if we want to survive in a positive way. We can do this for our children and our grandchildren. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Davidson. I'm sorry for pushing me to finish in short time, but you delivered the essence of your presentation, and thank you. And he emphasized the importance of our change of the world view to solve this current problem. Now we'll hear the commentary from the Professor Arnold Lorum. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I get the clicker? The clicker. Oh. So first, I want to thank HJIFEP for inviting me here. I'm a neuroscientist focusing on well-being. I'm a researcher at the CNRS in France, the government organization, and I'm also a researcher at the University of San Diego, California, where I am right now. And I'm also a scientist at the Institute of Noetic Sciences that was created by astronaut Edgar Mitchell when he had epiphany coming back to the Earth. And so what does a neuroscientist has to say about climate change? And so first I want to thank Professor Davidson for his great presentation, which really outlined the concrete path. And now I want to add a little bit about the human path. And Dr. Sunjin Moon mentioned how and why our parents created HJIFEP and the interconnection between human and nature. Dr. Chung, you mentioned Dr. Trump was courageous. And there's a lot of other people who are courageous. 52% of Americans voted for Donald Trump. And I think part of our work is to show them that they're not being courageous, they're being foolish. So why are they being foolish? Because by altering nature and climate, you're really altering our well-being. For example, a comprehensive review found that 92% of studies reported improvements from outdoor activities of people. They really like to be in nature. And this is not subjective. This is hard, blinded studies. Also, climate distress or eco-anxiety is a real problem in the youth in the Western world. There's a lot of young adults who are really who have extreme anxiety about climate. So one solution and one hypothesis, the scientific hypothesis we're working on at the Institute of Noetic Sciences is that consciousness is it potentially a property of nature, and to show that we are connected with our environment, and by that mean make people aware that they should not destroy their environment because they're part of it. And so this is some of these studies. For example, we knew that pigeons can orient themselves in the Earth's magnetic field. But recent studies, so they have magnetoreceptors inside their brain, recent studies seems to point that humans also have the same capacity to sense the Earth's magnetic field. So we're not independent of our environments, and there are more studies in that direction. Here is another study showing that women's menstrual cycle is synchronized with moon phases. And this is just a paper from 2021, because it was hard, I guess, to get all the statistics right. And the moon influence also the tilt of the Earth and climate. So there's a link there between our physiology and climate. Here is another study showing that sunspots and solar wind influence directly humans' physiology. They influence heart rate variability. And we don't know exactly what's the mechanism. It's still an ongoing field of research, but it just points to the direct link between our physiology and nature. And then this is a more recent effort showing that we can study people's brain waves, but we can also study trees waves. And that's not very complex. So you just record potential on the trunk of the trees. And some trees are, this is how it would look, for example, the brainwave of the trees. And then so you can get a network of recording multiple trees and potentially assess if climate change and weather affect these patterns, if we can detect the stress in trees. So this is just ongoing research project showing our connection, our direct connection of our physiology and plants' physiology with nature, and how we can show people to be more connected with each other and with nature. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Very exciting research results that are showing the nature is really alive. Thank you. While we have now, according to our schedule, we have the discussion time, but we do not have much time. Only 5 minutes is left. And so I will skip the question and discussion session, and I just summarize of today's sessions. At first, we had the presentation about the seriousness of the climate change and environmental pollution. And so to solve that problem, the international cooperation has been arranged, including the Paris Agreement. And we may think that the fundamentals of the international cooperation is laid down, so the climate change maybe automatically could be solved by the international cooperation, but it is not. It's because we know that the Paris Agreement is not mandatory. It's very important. So that is already, there is a sign that we could not achieve the goal that already had set by the Paris Agreement, because many government reports showing that their target is already not trying to lower down their target, or their performance is lower than the target that they have proposed at the beginning of the Paris Agreement. So that means that we cannot entirely leaving it to the governmental or international cooperation. So there should be the action from the most fundamental level, the individual level, and what we can do. People may think about it. And so the economy, because one of the reasons is that because of the economic system is now a linear system, and Professor Davidson has proposed that it would be better to change it from the linear system to circular system, but it is not an easy job. So what we can do is that I think that we have to awaken from ourselves first. What is the topic of the awakening? I think that is that we are not in a position that protecting the environment or the saving the earth, or not in that position. We belong to earth. We belong to nature. That is very important. And in that sense, then we have to expand our recognition on the nature and wisdom. And also, I think that in the sense we can expand our concept on the science and technology also. Because current science and technology community is already a very robust thinking that the Newtonian mechanics is the best one and we cannot escape from it. But I think that we'd like to, if we expand our concept on the science and technology also, then we may have some generous mind even on the free energy. The free energy is now understood or accepted as ridiculous or impossible, but once it is accepted or developed, human beings can do it, I think, then the world will be changed. And about that, what we can do is that we just think about it, oh, it may be possible, that's enough. I think that in individual level. Then someday, the government policy may be changed and we can have a solution, the real solution about the climate change. So it is a summary of myself on today's presentation, and thank you very much for all of your participants and the speaker. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Professor Davidson, Professor Delorme, and Professor Bahang, for this very, very interesting and informative session. Before we conclude this session, we would like to invite all the speakers to come to the stage for a group photo. Could we please do that? And then we're going to have to move very quickly, I'm sorry to tell you. I'll give you the announcements immediately after the photo. The lunch will be in this room from 12:30, and we have to depart the room and come back as quickly as possible. And then many of you will be going to the National Assembly this afternoon. Buses for the National Assembly will leave at 1 o'clock, so we don't have a great deal of time. Okay, we have several announcements, if everyone could just listen for a moment. Each of you received a form for your contact information. Would you please leave the form at the registration desk as you depart out there, and then we will be able to be in touch with you with future information. Also, if you'd like to pick up a copy of this magazine, they're available at the registration desk, UPF's magazine. And now about the schedule, everyone. Lunch is in this room at 12:30. Buses depart for the National Assembly at 1 o'clock. Ushers in the lobby will guide you to the side exit of the hotel to catch the bus to the National Assembly. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, the session on the role of women toward a hopeful future of peace and prosperity will begin in this room at 2:30 p.m. All ladies are warmly invited to participate. Okay, thank you so much. If you would mind stepping out.